It started with a photograph. A photograph of people I swore weren't in my class. But somehow I knew their faces like I'd seen them every day. It was supposed to be a simple field trip. Our history class was visiting an old asylum that had been abandoned for decades. A place we'd all heard rumors about, but never truly understood. I didn't expect it to turn into something I would never forget. We were told it would be a fun day-on opportunity to learn about the past in an environment we could touch and feel. But as soon as we arrived, I sensed something off. The air was too still, and the old building felt like it was holding its breath. The temperature dropped noticeably as we entered, and the sunlight outside seemed to shrink into the distance. It was like the asylum was trying to push us out before we'd even set foot inside. Our teacher, Mrs. Caldwell, led us inside. She was always a little on edge, but today she seemed more uneasy than usual. Her eyes kept darting around, like she was expecting something or someone. I noticed she was clutching her bag tighter than usual, as though it held something valuable, though we were too young to ask her about it. The group split up once we got inside, with our guide leading us through the decaying hallways. We were mostly focused on the history of the building, the cracked walls, the rusting metal doors, and the old chairs that lined the hallways, left behind as if the patients had just walked out. But as we explored, I started to feel an uncomfortable sense of being watched. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then I started to notice that my classmates looked uneasy too. The group that had gone ahead of us had gone silent. I could see them standing in front of a room at the end of a long hallway, staring into it with blank expressions. It wasn't normal. I moved closer, trying to see what had them frozen, and that's when I noticed it. On the far wall, there were photographs, dozens of them yellowed with age, framed and tacked to the peeling wallpaper. They were just there, in the middle of nowhere with no real explanation. It was odd, sure, but I didn't think too much of it until I looked closer. The first photo I saw was a black and white image of a group of patients, I assumed based on the setting. They looked so lifeless, staring directly at the camera with hollow eyes. But what really disturbed me wasn't their vacant gazes, but the fact that I recognized someone in the photograph. A girl. She had the same hair and eyes as one of my classmates, Emily. I turned to her, but before I could ask, she was already walking away, looking just as unsettled as I felt. I stepped closer to the photo, my hand instinctively reaching for it, but then I saw something that made my stomach turn. There were more photographs, all with faces I knew, people I saw in the halls every day, in my class, in my group. How could they be here? I felt dizzy, as though the room was spinning around me and the floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. I stepped back and looked at my classmates. The unease in their eyes had turned into something worse. Shared realization, something we were all starting to understand but couldn't voice. I started to feel a cold sensation in the air, as if something was breathing down my neck. It wasn't just the temperature. It felt ... wrong. I didn't want to look back at the photographs, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I kept expecting to see Emily in one of them, but there were more faces. Faces I didn't recognize at first. Faces that made my blood run cold. It was as if the asylum was collecting us, pulling us into its forgotten past. I pulled my phone out and snapped a quick photo of the wall. I didn't know why, but I needed to. The rest of the group seemed to have snapped out of their trance and began talking in hushed voices, trying to make sense of what was happening. I was about to turn to Mrs. Caldwell when something caught my eye. One of the photos had moved. It wasn't by much, just a shift, a subtle change, but it was enough to make me freeze in place. The photo, once of a man I didn't recognize, had a new face, someone I knew, a face I had seen only minutes ago. It was one of my classmates, Jake. But how? He hadn't been in the room with me when I saw the photo earlier. I blinked, trying to make sense of it, but the room felt colder. The shadows growing longer as the sunlight began to fade outside. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The others were starting to gather around, whispering nervously. "Let's go," Emily said, her voice tight with panic. "This place is messing with our heads." We tried to leave, but as we made our way back through the asylum's winding corridors, something strange happened. We couldn't find the exit. The hallways seemed to twist and stretch, leading us in circles. Every corner we turned brought us to another set of rooms, all filled with the same disturbing photographs, faces we knew, faces of classmates, faces that shouldn't have been there. Then we heard it. A soft sound, at first a whisper, barely audible. "Don't leave. It came from somewhere deep within the building, but we couldn't pinpoint where. We rushed to the nearest exit, only to find it locked, another door sealed. Panic began to set in. We were trapped. Finally, Mrs. Caldwell managed to pry open a side door, and we bolted out of the building, our breaths heavy with fear. But even as we left the asylum behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us, something in the photographs, something that had taken notice of us. We never spoke about it again, not to our teacher or to each other. But I can't forget those faces, frozen in time, staring at me as I walked away. They haunt me every night now, and I know that somehow they're still watching. Is this conversation helpful so far?